A horizon of dogs barked very far from the river by Howard W. Robertson. A feeling like those waters of distant lakes beyond the dark alder branches. A shudder like finding the end of the silver string that will lead past eternity's gate. A thought like the sound of the big black fly buzzing in a certain slant of light at a funeral inside my brain. Overwhelms me quite, for Boris of Cottonwood Creek has died. Sired by Mad Max von Süsswasser and whelped by Dame Schöne Liebe, my big black dog is dead. When Hope was a girl, on her mother's parlor wall were hung the framed and famous words, "We are in view of the ocean, this great Pacific Ocean that we have so long waited to see. Oh, the joy!" which Captain Clark exclaimed late in 1805 as he stood amid the Clatsups on a basalt cliff that by 20 million years ago had emerged from those submarine volcanoes and their accreted seamounts out of the yellow brackish water where starfish, sand dollars, crabs, clams, sea snails, and ancient sharks moved over a sandy substrate throughout the Miocene. And by the door of her father's workshop was put another quote. The wonderful one-horse shay was built in such a logical way that it ran 100 years to a day. Driven by a spherical predominance, a vast shadow moves as if a great ring of absent light, as if nature has intended to become the great nothingness, or maybe vice versa, as if these braiding colors are bleeding out through the empty interstices of space-time, as if the pneumatic kinesis of the Hagios Logos is manifesting a pure essence sub specie nullitatis, as if endless nowhere sits at the numberless centers to the circumferenceless universe, and as if concentric eidolons have arrived to haunt the spiraling speculations of nullophile metaphysicians and of mystics of grand vacuity alike, that the teeming pluriverse originally emerged from and ultimately returns unto the void. That being and non-being are only complementarities entwined by the correlative of synthetic activities of annihilating and exnihilating, that das Nichts an sich gives boundaries for and interpenetrates any entity, thus separating and infusing it with emptiness and mutability and liberty, and that Tom Maiden fills the logician with dread and desperate denial, but inspires those who hold nil sacred to rhapsodize freely in a vocabulary of holes and gaps, lacks and losses, absences, holy silences, voids and vacancies. And the shadow touches my mind, kindly tells me that my Boris has joined the elemental verbs in an energetic flow song of cosmic chronos, after having lived his long, fine dog day of a life, and reminds me of what Hope did when her father died, how right after reading The Unobstructed Universe by Mr. White, she sat down in her family's farmhouse in the Cascade foothills near Granger and asked her dad to send her a sign, specifically a citation to a passage in Bartlett's familiar quotations, which he did, directing her to 519:15, where she found the renowned one-horse shay that was exceedingly durable but could not last forever. Hope then journeyed with her widowed mother and maiden-aunt to Bern, city of the bears, in order to attend that global conference on receiving messages from the dead, a Geisterhaft, albeit pragmatic conclave, conjured up by the Spiritual Frontiers Fellowship, a sort of how-to workshop for eliciting and recognizing signals from beyond the bounds of our mortality, asserting in defiance of the materialism of medical science that the straw dogs of inhuman heaven or earth could access the googleplex of ghostly Tenchi actions, trajected arrow-like at the same peripatetic target that did become this unified instant. But I who observe these gloomy clouds inseparable from their autumn afternoon, I who have lain dog-like on belly and bended arm below the starry cathedral sky of summer and tremble to hear the spectral bells toll, I who believe I sense the larger-than-life world listening to this flowing laughter through these noiseless tears, I who still grieve for my bear-like dog, I go nowhere now to invoke the spirit of the universe. The panpsychic truth that joins all paths in consciousness and comes to completion in strength and in compassion. The breath of God which all things float upon as soaring notes of simple pathos and blue joy. This quantum afflatus that chaotically inspires our outracing intuitions to rise through the sacred skies and delve into holy soil until they do encompass sincerely the celestial sphere and earthly core. The energetic flow that dissolves all our distinctions between nature and civilization and resolves their bogus opposition in favor of the former. The cosmic harmony to blend with which requires a natural discipline, uniting a goal and origin in each authentic moment, and offering a transcendent freedom that lies lost beyond the reach of human reasoning, but that can be found anytime in the one point in our lower abdomen. The pervasive essence called ki or chi or prana, that does erase all boundaries between the physical and spiritual, and reanimates the hylozoic web in which we are these so temporary concentrations who respire the power of the world while we last, whose Sein zum Tode centers around how to act faithfully out of a glory that spreads like ceaseless circles on dark water, and to do so while struggling fiercely to survive in a vicious evolutionary context of inevitable violent conflict. To embody spherically the truly limitless grace of a mysterious divinity while spiraling savagely between those self-evolving double helices of earthly existence and this endless chain of self-reproducing components of that self-legislating pluriverse. In brief, to love selflessly yet manage to live long. We were wondering whether Boris would or even could send us some sort of sign, a message, because maybe not only humans had souls. When out of the blue afternoon, Hope's ex-brother-in-law called about the death of our well-built dog and quoted the exact same words her dead father had sent her long ago about that so wonderful one-horse shay, which caused us to conjecture, my scientific wife and me, about the way our seemingly indestructible 130-pound canine had been constructed, about this phylogenetic history that started here on our continent some 40 million years ago in the gradually drier and ever more seasonal forests of North America, where from among the myriad life forms scrambling around in the lush underbrush skulked forth Hesperocyon, the stalwart progenitor of the diverse Canidae family, whose descendants emerged unto the vast plains and evolved into superbly adapted pursuit carnivores, such as the primitive wolf Usayan, who immigrated into Asia a mere 5 million years ago, and thence to Europe, whence the Rottweiler breed only recently returned to the species' ancestral homeland on our isolated landmass. And about how when we were walking through a field of powder blue chicory and dusty red everlasting peas, in the 100-degree heat down in Ashland near the Windmill Inn, where brave Boris was staying in the presidential suite during what turned out to be the last week of his lengthy life. He heard an ambulance and howled a long, soulful howl that was ancient then and holy still as it now echoes spiraling through my spiritual extension. Boris passed away in his 11th year on July 29, 2005, 10 years and 10 months of age when the prostate cancer snatched him from us, and 9 mornings after his final falling asleep, I woke at 11:11 a.m. from the dream of Boris looking down through our bedroom window and then in through our glass back door. not black and tan as once, but bluish black, with dimly glowing dark blue edges, and even more massive now than like a small buffalo, giving me that same deadpan, sidelong look of his that usually meant he was about to tell a good hoof joke or mime something else loving and really funny, and squinted through my sleep-blurred corneas to grab my first glance at the raven with a white wing feather who has haunted our yard ever since, and through whose visits I have intuited existence or being in its vast universal or pluriversal totality as this rippling film that may or may not have circumference, may or may not connect with itself in an endlessly Mobian loop, and nothingness or void as an intimate eternity on either side of the ever-roiling events of our entire turbulent pellicle, and everywhere throughout it all, too, as though passing through a permeable membrane. The one-horse shay, the weirdly gleaming dream dog, the white-winged raven, these contacts with dearly departed Boris have comforted me and helped me to work my way through the dialectic of grief, from a loyal pain antithetically unto a forgetful betrayal, into this synthesis of celebratory remembrance, following an insubstantial thread that would lead through things that changed, but would never itself alter, letting go of this ghostly guiding string as the breeze would rustle the dry leaves like trust, as the curtains on the open window would drift in fractal contours, as the bells of heaven would ring out in wildest peals for my big dog like a small bear. But these three signs cannot replace the old dog who barked backward without getting up, and who leapt up constantly as a pup, cannot walk with me daily along the headwaters of Cottonwood Creek like Doggy Q Boy did, and stood around with me there gladly, and cannot play Where's Boris with me in the bedroom, the game where I would hide under the covers and ask the question until he poked his big black nose up under the huge white sheet and found me, which I imagine is doing still, as if some tutelary spirit, a Wyakin now, when I whisper into death under these blankets of existence.